Hi folks, in this video I'm going to do a lot more ranting than usual. As a matter of fact, there's nothing useful that you can get from this video other than hearing my experiences and my opinion about the Paycheck Protection Program. Towards the end, I'll tell you, maybe I'll give you a glimmer of hope on the type of advice I've been giving my clients that did not get the funding. However, let me walk you through real quick about my perspective of this whole program. So probably about 15% of my clients either got an approval, got funding, or got any sort of communication that their loan is in progress. Yesterday, April 16th, the SBA announced that they ran out of money. And right now, as we speak, the Congress is debating on whether or not to fund the program some more. Republicans wanted to have a clean bill where they just add $250 billion to the program, don't need to make any changes, just throw more money at it. And Democrats are trying to slow it down. They're trying to break it up into pieces. They're trying to allocate the money to certain groups, allocate some of the money to hospitals, allocate some of the money to protected smaller businesses and minorities and stuff like that. So I understand from both sides of the aisle the motivations to take $250 billion and move it to their constituents. And I don't want to get too much into politics and whether or not I agree they should fund the program some more. As a matter of fact, I probably would be on the side of not creating this program at all from the beginning, because the way it was made, it was rushed. First of all, it wasn't planned, and on top of the fact, they allowed the banks to make all the decisions. Now, I do have to give props to the small banks, to the community banks, because they knew what the program was all about. It was about helping small businesses make their payroll. So the smaller banks, the community banks, moved really fast on this and played a lot less politics than the large banks. Now, not just politics, but also economics. The large banks, Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo was in a very specific situation, but Citibank, all the bigger banks, what they were doing was, and I'm speculating because I don't have hard evidence on this, but the numbers show it. They prioritized the larger loans first. So they funded the larger loans first. Now, granted, the larger loans have more employees, and the sentiment of the program is to get the employees to stay in payroll and not go to the unemployment office. So the motivation of the bigger banks was to obviously to fund as many loans as possible in the bigger tickets rather than the smaller tickets, because it's technically the same amount of work for a bank to manage a $500,000 loan or $2 million loan or a $10 million loan versus a $10,000 loan. So I understand the economical motivation to do that because all the banks were short-staffed and the banks were bringing in people from everywhere. They were having them work overtime, working all crazy hours of a night. I mean, a banker working past 5 o'clock used to be something that you never see. So this was happening, and some of the banks played economics and politics. And what I mean by politics is, in the application, one of the crucial numbers that you had to put in the PPP loan is number of jobs saved, or number of jobs created, or headcount, right? And at the end of the day, the purpose of the program is so they can accumulate a total number of headcount. And you'll see this as soon as you see politicians praising on how successful this program is. What they're going to do is they're going to say, this program was so successful that we were able to save whatever, 10 million jobs, 20 million jobs, or 20 million Americans still have their jobs, can still put food on the table, blah, 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 because of this program. So long story short, the program is a jobs program. It wasn't really meant to help small businesses. It wasn't meant to help the small business owner, for that matter. It was really just meant to fund businesses that can pay payroll through this crisis. And hopefully by, June or whatever, we're out of this crisis and our economy is back up, and there's no need for the government to continue to intervene and fund small businesses. But the reality was that based on the numbers the SBA posted, 1.6 million businesses were funded. 1.6 million businesses were funded $350 billion. That makes the average loan size approximately $218 million, which makes for average payroll approximately $1 million. Now, I understand there are plenty of small businesses that fall into this 500 under this 500 employee range that have a lot of employees and have a $1 million payroll. And I don't resent any of the businesses that got the funding, and hopefully the money was put to good use, and the employees kept their jobs, and they kept putting jobs food on the table, just like the politicians are about to boast about. But the challenge is that this was supposed to help small businesses and self-employed. At least it was the sentiment behind it, or the politics behind it. The optics was we're helping all sorts of small businesses. And I've seen many small businesses with less than 10 employees or less than 20 employees that applied for the Paycheck Protection Program on day one at 9 o'clock in the morning. I personally oversaw the application process. I personally got all the 941s, W-2s, 2019 tax returns. We had even more information that what they were asking for. Spreadsheets, everything cleaned up and ready to go, posted on day one. And none of these people, especially bigger banks, got any sort of feedback. If they call the 1-800 number, they said, no, we're not going to give you any answers on PPP. Wait until we reach you, or we talk to you. And then it comes in 2 weeks later and they tell us the funds are out. So I personally, I'm not a big fan of government just handing money to people willy-nilly. But I also understand the other side of the coin, where we're in an unprecedented situation. We've never seen this before. The government forced businesses to shut down. We want to keep people from unemployment, not just because of the financial ramifications of unemployment, but the psychological ramifications of unemployment. When you are employed, your spirits are up, your self-confidence is up, and you have money that you earned, right? When you're unemployed, you might possibly get similar amount of money, especially with the government adding the extra $600 per week to the unemployment check. And I don't know what that looks like because I'm not unemployed and I haven't gone through the process myself. But in many, many cases, the unemployment check itself might be as generous or even more generous than the old job. So I understand that there was ways to give money to unemployed people, but the problem is the optics of 20 million, 25 million people unemployed hurts the market, right? And it hurts the politicians that are in charge, both Democrats and Republicans. I don't want to turn this into something about politics. However, they did so many things wrong with this program. First thing, they gave the banks 1 week to implement. Second, they didn't give the banks any direction in terms of what type of clients they can take or not take. So they allowed clients to decide. So for example, Bank of America came out of the gate saying, only if you have a loan or a credit card with us, you can apply. And I believe, I'm not sure, a couple of days later, they opened applications for people that didn't have a lending relationship. Regardless, you had to have a bank account in Bank of America prior to February 15th to be able to apply. Chase didn't come in with the portal until 3 or 4 days later. And me personally, I couldn't even log in because I had some glitch with my login, and I had to be in for hours and hours on the phone trying to convince someone that it's not a PPP problem, it's a login problem. And until I got it sorted out, I wasn't able to put my application in for my business or my employees. And that was maybe the 7th or the 8th. It wasn't even that late in the game. I also tried PayPal. I tried Wells Fargo, which had a very specific situation where they had a cap of $10 billion. So they had to stop taking applications. Wells Fargo did a horrible job from the beginning. They weren't even ready on Friday. They were ready on Saturday. Nobody was notified. Apparently they took applications. I haven't even seen the application process. And I have several Wells Fargo clients. I used to work for Wells Fargo. I used to love the company. Now I'm not sure how I feel about Wells Fargo anymore. Actually, I'm not sure how I feel about any big banks, period. Because in my client base, the only clients that got the funding for the PPP were larger loans, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. And now, I'm not saying they didn't need it because they had 30 employees, 40 employees, 50 employees, 60 employees. They had a lot of employees. I get it. And maybe that money would allow all those people to keep their jobs. And I'm happy for that. But generally speaking, a business that has 50 employees, generally, they've done a lot better performance-wise in terms of profits and net income. And generally speaking, they're better prepared. Generally speaking, they have more savings. Generally speaking, they have better advisors, accountants, attorneys, consultants that help them through this process right off the get-go. Hey, and I was one of those accountants for one of those clients that was able to help him through this process and get the funding. So I don't want to vilify anyone for this, but the reality is that so many of the smaller companies, sub 10 employee, sub 20 employee companies, they didn't even have a chance from the get-go. And while I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not a person that champions equality, forced equality, I am a person that champions equality of opportunity. And the system wasn't set up to have equality of opportunity. First come, first serve was not really achieved. And I can tell you that firsthand because my application went into Bank of America for one of my businesses on Friday at 8 a.m. and I didn't even get anything, right, by now. So I personally have a profitable business, and I've had enough savings, to be able to withstand bad parts, the bad economy, and I can still pay my employees. So I'm glad and thankful and grateful that life has given me a really good career, good business, good clients, that I'm able to do that. But I'm thinking about all my other clients that have cried to me over the phone, that I've been talking to in the last couple of weeks, that asked me, hey, should I apply somewhere else? And I naively said, it's okay. You got Bank of America. They were the first ones in there. They were a big bank. Your application is first in. Why should you even bother messing it up and applying somewhere else? I gave some of my clients that advice. Don't bother going to another bank. Don't go into a smaller bank. So I obviously overestimated my confidence in the big banks' ability to execute on this. And that's the one thing that gets me really, really mad. I'm happy that the small banks were able to move fast. I'm happy some of my clients got the funding, the ones that went through the small banks. But I'm really, really irate at Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank for how bad this was handled. And on top of that, I'm really irate at our federal government and Congress and our president and Secretary of State. I'm irate at everybody that they didn't set any rules. They set up no oversight. There was no one in charge of making sure this thing went through. In theory, Secretary Mnuchin was in charge, but in charge of what? He didn't do anything. Or Jovita, the SB administrator, again, in charge of what? They didn't do anything. They didn't press on any banks to do things right. They didn't give directions to the banks on how to process this from the beginning. So many mixed feelings here, and if you've listened up to this point, you probably have the same feelings too. I would love to know in your comments if that's the case. Long story short, okay, so what if you're a small business, you have employees, and you didn't get the funding? So long story short, what have I learned with this? Number one is you should never, ever, 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 ever count or depend on the government for anything. I mean, bottom line, I can't trust government nowadays. I can't. It's going to be up to you, up to your employees, up to your clients, up to your branding, and up to the free market to help you succeed in your business. But at the same time, the free market, which is the banks being able to do whatever they want, right, at the cost of reputation risk, and they do have some reputation risk, they fudged this up too. They messed this up too. So it's sort of it's difficult to have a strong opinion towards depending on the government to do something right, or depending on the free market to do something right, where they both screwed this up. And they didn't technically screw it up. They followed the money, right? They went with the bigger loans, with the bigger commission rates, with the least amount of effort, the most amount of money to be made in the process. And I find it completely unbelievable that no one in Congress, no one in the SBA, no one in the Treasury, no one in any sort of regulatory oversight thought that maybe, possibly, this could happen. That you're giving away free money to companies, and that the big companies that had much more influence over their banks had capacity to get this money over the little companies. How in the world nobody saw this coming? I mean, I know you were watching this and you're like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew this wasn't going to be for me. I knew they weren't really helping me. But I'm pretty sure that amongst people watching this and listening to this, there's at least a few people that truly believed that help was coming, and truly believed that this program was designed to help you keep your business alive and help you pay your employees. I truly believe many of you believe that, because I did, okay? I didn't just do it. I created a plethora of videos, 10, 12, I don't know how many videos I created, showing people how to do this, a tutorial, how to go to each bank, how to do the application, how the law works. I retracted all my mistakes. I went back and said, this is how I think it works. This is how I think you should approach it. I think this is the bank that you should try. I mean, I did so many things to help the community, to help small businesses, to help other accountants to get this done right. And even within that framework, that I was very prepared, and I was semi-leading the charge, helping people how to do this. Even within that framework, the fact that I didn't get the funding and my clients didn't get the funding, which to me is the most sacred thing. My clients didn't get the funding. My clients came to me and said, you know what? I'm going to trust you because you're the expert. I'm going to trust you because you've been making all these videos about it. I'm going to trust you because obviously you have the experience. I shouldn't work with anyone else to try to do this. I'm going to take your advice and do this. And my clients did this and they trusted me. And now this happens, right? They have no funding. And some of my clients that were very diligent in listening to my advice and putting the loans in their actual banks that they had relationships and sending all the documents on time, they didn't even have a chance in the first place. So that was just extremely frustrating. So what kind of advice am I giving them now? So one piece of advice I'm giving them is, you know what? Never do any sort of business planning assuming that government's going to come in and bail you out, period. I know that you see it on TV. I know you hear on the radio. I know you read about many companies that get saved by the government. And I think it does happen in one way, shape, or form. But bottom line, it cannot be a philosophy. Now, if you have employees and you can't pay them, the best thing you can do is let them go, lay them off, furlough, whatever. Let them go through the process of unemployment. Because if your business goes under, because you're gonna reap from all your savings and you're gonna make the effort to pay them, because I know you're a business owner and you're a good person and you care about your employees and you want to keep them on staff and you're gonna indebt yourself as a business owner to be able to pay them. That's gonna be the bad move, because if your business doesn't survive once the economy goes, gets fixed, whatever that looks like, once we get back to normal, you're not gonna have a business to employ them again. So right now it's time to put your own oxygen mask on before you help others, like they say in the airlines, right? You need to do whatever it's right for your business. If you need to lay off employees, you need to do them. Be honest. Tell them, listen, our business is shut down. I can't pay you, whatever, and do it. And if there's a few key employees you can keep that can actually do productive work, that can actually produce income, that can actually work with clients, that can actually move your business forward, keep those. But in reality, I just don't have any more advice for you. I don't know how to get free money from the government. The PPP program it felt like that was the only opportunity. We had to do that. The SBA loan was an opportunity too, but then that also felt like a lottery where billions of people applied and millions of people applied and only a handful got it. And there's no rhyme, reason, or pattern in terms of what companies get it and which ones don't get it, just because there was no guidelines. There was no details, right? They jammed the law through. They said, go do it, go get him, Tiger. And then there was no details whatsoever. So this is also a really important lesson about planning in general, right? I know that a lot of people's advice is just do it, just go with it. Trust me, it will work. And that's generally good advice versus someone that's just sitting at home doing nothing and contemplating doing something with their lives. Yeah, I would say, yeah, go do it. But in general, if you're going to administer $350 billion, there has to be a plan, right? There has to be some sort of projections. And the government right now is debating whether or not to fund it an extra $200 billion, $250 billion. Again, where do these numbers come from? How do they come up with these numbers? 1.6 million businesses out of 30 million small businesses got funded. 1.6 million out of 30 million. Okay, that's less than, 3 million would have been 10%. So we're talking about 5%, something like that, right? So about 5% of businesses got funded. So 95% of small businesses were not helped through this program. And I guarantee you, and I don't have this is all anecdotal evidence, but out of this 5 million that were funded, I bet you half of them, or 60% of them, 40% of them, were not shut down, didn't even need it, right? They were still operating, they still had revenues, they could still weather the storm per se. So it is just unfathomable. It's, to me, it's just insane that we would add $350 billion to our national debt, or print $350 billion and create hyperinflation with absolutely no plan. And why was there no plan? Because our government, our president, our secretary of state, our current administration played politics. They said, let's do this fast because people need it fast. Because the appearances of moving fast was, they kept saying sooner rather than later. What the hell does that mean? Sooner rather than later means nothing, right? So the appearances of moving fast gave people the impression that they were solving issues fast. And then 2 weeks later, they didn't think that repercussions would come in. There's going to be repercussions. I hope that there's repercussions in November. And if people felt that the government wasn't really helping small businesses through the process, right? And you can blame the banks, you can blame the SBA or whatever, but who's the one that came on TV and promised the money, right? It was the current administration, not just the president, the current administration. And they came out. You can actually see a video that I posted back in April 3rd at night, right before the program came out. I said, Secretary Mnuchin said, tomorrow the banks will be ready. And the press checked them and said, the banks are saying they're not ready. They're saying, don't worry, they're going to be ready. We spoke to all the banks. They're going to be ready. They're going to be ready. You're going to be able to apply. You're going to get the money. You're going to get it the next day or the same day. Now, I understand. I'll cut him some slack. Getting the money the same day, okay, that was a gaffe, okay? That was just unrealistic. But I don't care if it wasn't. If I would have gotten the money 2 weeks later, I would be fine. But that's not the case. And many of my clients, that's not the case. So what they go back and say, well, we didn't mean that it was to be the same day. That's an aspirational goal. That's what our government tells us today. That's the new keyword, right? To say aspirational goal. So they can say, so they can at least appear to be moving fast, or they can appear to be doing something, but take none of the responsibility if it doesn't actually get done. So that's just, again, I know this is a big rant, but I've just been extremely frustrated through this process. I know my clients have been. I know my YouTube audience has been, because I have read hundreds and hundreds of comments and hundreds of emails of people frustrated because they don't know what to do, because their bank doesn't let them apply, because it's not clear what documents they need. Some banks were asking for different documents. I get your frustration, and I wish I had a solution for you. But with that being said, 5% of you were able to get the loan, and 5% of you got the funding to be able to keep your business open and keep your employees paid. And I would love to hear in the comments that, because I don't want this to be all negative, 100% negative. So long story short, if the government approves additional funding, PPP will probably continue. I'm not sure if they'll make some changes. I'm not sure if it'll just be a clean bill and just add more funding. If your application is already in the process, don't withdraw it. Don't despair. If you haven't applied yet and your bank lets you apply, do it anyway. I know it's gonna feel like wasted time if you don't get the funding, but do it anyway, because if we do get additional funding, hopefully your application should be in line. My bank, Chase and Bank of America, they both told me, don't worry, if there's more funding, you don't have to apply again. Yeah, that's how they're saving face for the colossal error that they have made. So that's what advice I'll give you. The other advice I'll give you is, look, if your business is going to go under because of COVID-19, or because you don't have money to pay your employees, or for whatever, if it's going to go under, just let the business go under. And then once the economy gets back on track, reinvent yourself. Okay, it's not the end of the world, or I hope it's not the end of the world. Okay, businesses close and open all the time. This is my third business. My current accounting business is my third business. Okay, on my very first business that I started when I was 20 years old, I thought I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 25. It didn't work. On my next business I started when I was mid-20s, 25, 26, I also thought I was going to sell my business to a big tech company and I was going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, and it didn't work. And it wasn't until I turned 30 pretty much, or a little bit under that, where I started my accounting business, and this time it has worked. So I know some of you have businesses for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I know you don't want to let it fail. I really hope it doesn't. But if it needs to, hey, reinvent yourself. I've spoken to so many people that that I usually in my advisory sessions, I ask questions like, if you could do it all over again, or if you could sell your business now for whatever, $5 million, and you were to start over, what would that business look like? And 100% of people tell me about a different business, not a different industry per se, but just they would have built their business different, right? They would have used the knowledge from their experience and would have built the business different, maybe different overhead structure, maybe business, different brand, different employees, different product, different services, whatever. So if your business is going to go under, just, hey, start thinking about what is the new business going to look like. If you're able to get funding and keep your business open, great. If somehow you can dig into your savings and keep your business open, okay, I like that. But long story short, don't get into unpayable debt. Don't put yourself in a situation where in order to try to keep the business alive in this economy, put you in debt, or you run out of all your life savings for it. Right? I know it's frustrating, and I sure hope for a lot of you, other type of help is coming, not government help, but maybe help from a friend or a family member that gives you a good idea to build a different business. Or maybe help comes from a great client that comes to you and hires you immediately when they can. Or help could come in some other ways, where maybe a good advisor, an accountant, attorney, it whispers something into your ears that allows you to reinvent yourself and build the business of your dreams. But long story short, you can't let this frustration defeat you. I do feel partially defeated for this activity, for the PPP activity, but I don't feel defeated as a human being, as an accountant, and as a consultant. And I won't let this thing beat me up. So I promise you I'll continue to create content about this, about other government programs, and maybe going back to my core content, like QuickBooks accounting and taxes and just running your business the right way. We'll go back to that, and hopefully I'll continue to add value through this channel. But my apologies to you that as hard as I tried to create the content around the SBA loans and around the PPP program that was going to help you, I know a vast majority of you feel like it was a moot exercise. So I apologize for that, but at the same time, I would love to give you some words of encouragement that this is not the end of the world, that we should not have depended on the government in the first place, and we should build a business that depends on us, the effort that we put in, and our ingenuity and innovation from within. Yes, the market is depressed. Yes, it's difficult to find customers because they're all at home. Yes, the economy is strange, and we're living in the weirdest times that I've ever in my 40 years of being alive. But you have to be able to see the silver lining. You have to be able to see some options. Again, there's a great quote from Wayne Dyer that says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So if you made it this far and you heard this far, I would love to know in your comments. I would love to know how you feel and what you're going to be doing to make your business move forward, and how would you reinvent yourself. And if you were able to get PPP funding, yeah, I would love to hear about that too. Although I know 95% of the people that didn't get it are tired of hearing of all the people that got it. But hey, what can we do? So my commitment to you is I'll continue to create content that hopefully will help you and your business. And I'll do what I can to help you, although it felt like the PPP program wasn't that angel that was going to come in and swoop in and help everyone. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. We'd love to hear your comments, and I'll see you in the next one.